Oh my God. Well, that was an embarrassment. Uh, the Ravens went down to Philadelphia and got the 30-28 win against the Eagles. That's the only positive thing I can say about that. Now, of course, when you look at it, you're like, well, it's a win. We're 5-1. We should be happy, right? Yeah, we should be happy, but we should also be very concerned because of this performance. I was absolutely disgusted by what I saw from this offense. And in the second half, I was kind of disappointed with what I saw from that defense. Overall, the team's performance today was unacceptable. It was unacceptable. And that's why I'm saying it's embarrassing. Because we had a 17-point lead and we blew it. We gave up 0 points in the first half and gave up 28 in the second half. That's what's the embarrassing part. You still won the game, but that's what's embarrassing. So since I brought up the 28 points, let's talk about the defense. Defense today, for the most part, first half played lights out. Looked like the best defense in the league. They got to Carson Wentz. They forced a fumble. They were beating up on this dude. For the entire, for the entire first quarter and some of the second quarter, the Eagles offense had a total of -5 yards. They were dominant. Carson Wentz couldn't move the ball or do anything. He was getting sacked all over the place. Defense was dominant. Then they get a spark because they bring in Jalen Hurts and he starts running the ball, and all of a sudden the Eagles can move the ball. And they bring that momentum into the second half where they score 28 points on our defense. 28. Part of that has to do with the fact that our lackluster offense is getting off the field quick. Another part of that has to do with the fact that the Eagles are just winning the 50-50 balls. So I can't completely blame our defense for giving up 28 points. But the second time, you can't give up 28 points, guys. You cannot give up 28 points. In one half, you can't give up 28 points. Come on, guys. You know you can't give up 28 points. That's not good. You were dominant for one half, and you were pathetic for another half. Overall, it's a solid performance by the defense if you count it. Looking at it for the whole game, it was a solid performance, but you can't give up 28 points. That's just bad. Special teams was great as always. What else is new? Tucker was perfect. What else is new? This is Tucker, best kicker in the league, no question. So we expect that from special teams. But defense, you gotta be better. Now let's get in on this disgraceful offense, which is gonna be the most important part of this video. This Ravens offense is atrocious. It's terrible, and this offense is not going to lead us anywhere in the postseason. This was the worst performance this offense has had the entire season. And you may be looking at me like I'm crazy and be like, no, Kansas City was way worse because we couldn't even do anything. I beg to differ. In Kansas City game, we just weren't executing. You could say, for the most part, they didn't show up. It happens. And you could question the play calling as well. It happens. With this game, the play calling was bad, the execution was bad, and most importantly, the discipline was god-awful. We had 12 penalties on the game. 10 of those penalties was on the offense. 10 penalties on the offense. Everyone on the offensive line except Max Skura had a penalty. Ronnie Stanley had 4 penalties. Are you kidding me? We have never been this undisciplined on the offensive line before. Yeah, we've been bad at times. We've given up a lot of sacks before it's happened. But 10? 10 offensive penalties? And your offensive line's giving up that many penalties? So undisciplined on offense. It was pathetic. Anytime we actually had something going on offense, penalty. Holding call here. False start call here. Illegal formation. I mean, come on. What were they do? What was the reason for this lack of discipline on the offense today? It was absolutely pathetic. Golly. And that's got to go on Harbaugh because, you're the coach. You got to have your players playing disciplined. And yes, you could look at Greg Roman and say, well, he's the offensive coordinator. Shouldn't he have him disciplined? The offensive coordinator's main job is to call the plays. But as the head coach, it's your job to make sure all of your players are playing discipline. And today, the offense did not play discipline. And everyone wants to bring up, man, this offense is so terrible. Last year we were able to do this. Last year we were able to do that. Well, you know the biggest difference between this offense from this year and last year? Last year's offense, they didn't turn the ball over. They were actually executing. And most importantly, they were disciplined. They weren't hurting themselves by getting penalty after penalty after penalty. One drive in this game, we had 3 straight offensive penalties. 3. That just backed us up to like what, 1st and 35? Are you kidding me? 3 straight penalties? 3 straight in one drive? All by the offense? Oh my God. Offensive line was terrible today. Absolutely terrible. Couldn't be more disappointed in these guys. Now let's get into the receivers. For the most part, I'm not going to go hard on the receivers. Hollywood Brown, anytime he got the ball in his direction, he caught it. That's what we expect of Hollywood Brown. Mark Andrews, when he got the ball in his direction, for the most part, he did his job. He didn't get many targets today, but when he did get targeted, he actually did what he needed to do. Nick Boyle, who's not really a primary target, when he got targeted a lot today and made his catches, so I'll give him his credit. Willie Snead, I think he had 1 catch in this game, but I think he also had a drop. Willie Snead's Willie Snead. And Devin Duvernay, when he was on the field, he was effective. Other than that, they didn't really use him that much. So with the receiving core, they weren't anything spectacular, especially because his offensive line was so terrible that Lamar didn't have time to do anything. But when they did get the ball their way, for the most part, they did their job. Now, there was still some drops, which is just always going to be there with our offense, which is why we need to get a better receiver. But yeah, other than that, they were doing their job. There's still going to be some drops with this offense, but they weren't too bad. I should be going harder on the receiving core, but I'm going to ignore all the other receivers to focus on one player. Miles Boykin. This guy needs to get benched or he needs to go. He just needs to be off this offense. Take him off the field. I've said this week after week after week. Half the time, they don't use Boykin. The other half, when they use him, he's not doing anything. Now, he had a catch earlier in this game that got a first down. Good for him. They finally made a play. Good job, man. But this other play was unexcusable. It's a 3rd down play. And this dude's just taking off, and Lamar's throwing the comeback route because it was supposed to be a comeback route. He was expecting Boykin to come back, but this dude's just running straight vertical. He's just running a vertical. I don't know, what is he doing? He's taking off down the field, and Lamar Jackson expecting him to come back to the ball, and he just does it. Complete miscommunication. And you got Lamar just pissed off, looking at him, wondering, what is he doing? What are you doing? I can accept the fact that our receiving core isn't spectacular. I don't like that, but I can accept it. It's usually been the case for the Ravens throughout their entire franchise. I can also tolerate the fact that we're getting a lot of drops. Once again, I don't like that, but I can tolerate it. But one thing that's unacceptable is not being in sync with your quarterback and not running the right route that you're supposed to run. 3 straight weeks, Boykin has run the wrong route and has led to a huge miscommunication, either an underthrow by Lamar, an overthrow, or in Washington's case, an interception. I don't know what Boykin's doing. He is not in sync with anybody. He's not in sync with Lamar at all, and he's not even running the right routes. What is going on with this dude? When you've gotten to the point where you're not running the right routes, you need to be taken off the field because you're just not doing your job. If you cannot run the right routes, get off the field because you're not doing your job. You're not holding up your weight. And Boykin, he's got to go. He's got to get off this offense. Whether you want to release him, bench him, I don't care. Get him off the field. Get him off the field. Because this is the 3rd straight week he's run the wrong route, and it's just caused a miscommunication between him and Lamar Jackson. That's just unacceptable from a receiver. If you're not running the right route, what are you doing out there? Get him off the field. That's the only reason I'm not going to go too hard on the receiving core. Because, at least the other guys are running the right routes. They may be dropping passes, but for the most part, they're running the right routes. Boykin? No. Get him off the field. Get him off the field. Run game, for the most part, Ingram got injured. He suffered an ankle injury. He was pretty much out for this game. But Gus Edwards and J.K. Dobbins took over a majority of the carries. Mostly Gus Edwards. He was the one taking care of the carries. So he was out there doing his thing. Gus Edwards was doing his thing. J.K. for the most part. He got a couple carries, but there was not much for him to really do. They just gave the ball primarily to Gus Edwards. So that's what he did. And he had some solid runs, but the Eagles defense, they know what we're doing. Teams know what our offense is doing, and they've pretty much figured out how to attack the run game. They can't completely stop it, but they at least understand how we're going to run when we choose to run with our running backs. That's what they choose to do. They know our offense and how we're going to run those plays, so they're starting to figure that part out. So for the most part, the run game, I'm not so like looking at that and being like, well, the run game was terrible today. It's just the Eagles defense knew where we were going with the football when it comes to the run game. However, when it came to Lamar Jackson, he had over 100 yards rushing, so they really couldn't stop him. He also had a 30-yard rushing touchdown, which was great on him. Speaking of Lamar, let's get on his performance. Taking in all the factors that occurred in this game. The receivers dropping the passes, Boykin not even running the right route, the offensive line constantly either failing to protect him, which is forcing him to just run and scramble and try to create a play, or committing some sort of penalty. So taking all of this into account, Lamar Jackson played a solid game. He played a solid game. He had a touchdown pass. He ran for over 100 yards. Had a touchdown pass and a touchdown run. He, for the most part, did what he needed to do. Now, granted, he still made a few plays that I looked at him and questioned, like, what are you doing? He made a couple boneheaded plays. For one, on third down, we're in field goal range. He scrambles because, again, he's not getting protected. He scrambles to his right, and instead of throwing the ball away because everybody's covered, he's just scrambling around trying to create a play, and he ends up getting sacked. Lamar, you can't do that. That's just stupid. You can't do that. That's a boneheaded play by Lamar Jackson. Throw the ball away. Let's take the 3 points. You can't do that. You've got to be smarter. Another situation happened was on first down. It was a play action play, and Mark Andrews was open to his left, and Lamar Jackson just completely underthrew it. He sidearmed the throw, and it ended up being an underthrow that badly missed Andrews. That's something he can't do. One thing Lamar likes to do sometimes is he tends to get, comfortable throwing the sidearm, and he starts to do it a bit too much. He starts to overuse it, and that becomes a problem sometimes. So yeah, he's got to stop doing that. Though in this game, I understood why he was choosing to do that, because they kept batting his passes down early in that game, so he decided to switch towards a sidearm throw to try and get it in different angles. But sometimes, there were just some plays there where he just didn't need to do the sidearm throw, and it ended up causing an incompletion. So he's got to be better than that. Lamar himself throwing the football wasn't spectacular. He made some plays here and there, but for the most part, he could have been better. We didn't even attack downfield today, really. We didn't throw the ball down the field once this game, honestly. There was a throw that I believe went 20 yards to Hollywood Brown, but other than that, we were not throwing the ball down the field, which is the exact opposite of what we were doing against Cincinnati, where all we were doing were vertical plays. I'm glad they switched it up a little, but at some point, you got to take a shot down the field. And honestly, I felt like Lamar was looking to do that, but because of the way the offensive line was playing, he really couldn't get anything downfield. So Lamar throwing the ball today was not spectacular. Him running the ball today, he was spectacular. Overall, that's a solid performance from him. I expect him to make improvements, which I believe he will do, because last season, he made improvements after the bye week, and that's what led to him becoming the unanimous MVP. So I expect him after this bye week. By the way, thank God we're having a bye week after this, because we got the Steelers up next. And if we play the way we played today with the Steelers, we're going to lose. We're going to lose bad. So yeah, we're going to get bye week to try and fix all these issues. But yeah, for the most part, Lamar Jackson, he had a solid game, but he could have been better. He didn't play up to his own standards, at least throwing the football. Running the football, he was pretty good. But other than that, yeah, I got nothing else to say for Lamar. He's got to make improvements, and I believe he'll make improvements as this offense hopefully gets better. Last but not least, I talked about the players. Let's talk about the man himself, Greg Roman. This guy needs to go, man. I'm sorry. This guy needs to go. It's week 6, and this play calling is garbage. The offensive play calling is terrible. The play calling is terrible. This guy cannot call a pass play to save his life. His passing concepts are so trash. They're either trash or they're generic. When nothing else works, he just says, let's do all verticals. But when it comes to actually coming up with pass plays, he can't do it. He cannot do it. The offensive play calling was again bad in this game. I'm looking at this and I'm just confused as to what I'm seeing this dude call half the time. It was terrible. It was terrible. And I think that's a big part of why I believe defenses, for the most part, understand what our offense is going to do. Now, of course, last week when Cincinnati called us out and said that the only people Lamar throws to is both Hollywood and Mark Andrews, this time they decided to try and get everyone else involved. But still, some of the plays he was calling was just not great. And even though he was trying to get them involved, it didn't really account for much for most of the games. Like, the play calling was just bad. The play calling all day was just bad from Greg Roman. It looked nice for one drive, which is where they got the touchdown on the opening drive. But other than that, it was so inconsistent. At times, it was just a terrible decision or a terrible play call by him. And yeah, Greg Roman's just, I don't think he's that guy that's going to help us get to that next level. I just don't think that. I don't believe, at this point, defenses know what we're going to do. You expected this last year. His play calling was able to work because he had a quarterback that nobody really knew what to do with him. Nobody knew his habits. Nobody knew what he was going to do. So the play calling that Greg Roman was able to run, he was able to do it freely. This year, you're running a very similar play calling. Running a very similar package on play with your play calls, but teams understand what you're going to do. They know Lamar Jackson's habits. It's not like they're going to be able to completely stop him. Like I said, today in this game, he had over 100 yards rushing and a touchdown, and he also threw for a touchdown. But still, teams they know what you're going to do with the passing play because you're not creative with that. So they know how to slow that down. Not to mention our receivers aren't spectacular, so what are you going to do? They know how to plan for it. Each week, we're getting different looks on defenses, and they know the habits of Lamar, and they know the play calling that Greg Roman's going to do, so they attack that, and it's effective. That's why we're seeing so many 3-and-outs. That's why we're settling for field goals more. That's why we're getting a lot of empty drives, because Greg Roman's play calling has been figured out. Now, Lamar Jackson himself, it's not like he's going to be able to execute every time with that play calling, but he's done what he can, which is why it's come down to this offense being too Lamar-eccentric. If Lamar's not doing anything, we can't do anything. This is why I believe nobody else in the league can really run this type of offense. You have people from outside saying that if you put RG3 in this offense, they'd also be 5-1. No, they would not. They would not at all. Lamar is the X factor. He's making these plays. The play calling has been figured out, and he has to make these plays with both his arm and his legs. If Lamar Jackson didn't utilize his legs here today, no way we win this game. If he doesn't have over 100 yards rushing in that touchdown, we're losing to the Philadelphia Eagles today. Simple as that. That's a problem. We're too reliant on Lamar Jackson. Lamar Jackson isn't where he was last year right now. He's still trying to get that connection with his receivers. So that's what the problem is. You're too reliant on Lamar Jackson, and he's still trying to get back to that level with his receivers. So what do we do? What do we do? Overall, man, this game was a mess. Defense, second half, didn't look great. Offense all day looked pathetic. And honestly, Greg Roman, as a play caller, has been terrible. I'm going to talk about this more this week when it comes to what the Ravens need to do because we have our bye week and the Steelers are coming up after that. But like I've been saying the last couple weeks, honestly, it's getting to a point where Greg Roman needs to go. Like, Greg Roman really needs to go because it's become an issue at this point. And I don't like what I'm seeing. And I don't believe we can go far in the postseason with this guy being our offensive coordinator. You know, ironically, we're 5-1. This is the best start we've had since 2012, our Super Bowl season. You know what happened during that season? This offense up to that point was also inconsistent. The play calling was also terrible. And at some point in that season, we made a coordinator change. We went from Cam Cameron to Jim Caldwell. I believe at some point we're going to move on from Greg Roman this season. If you want to take that next step, we're going to have to move on from this guy because this is ridiculous, man. This is ridiculous. I can't. This guy, his play calling, at some point, it always gets figured out, no matter what quarterback he has. He's not the answer. And I understand the chemistry he has with Lamar Jackson, but at some point, if you really want to be able to compete in the postseason, you're going to need to have a new guy because this play calling is not working out, man. Greg Roman needs to go. Greg Roman needs to go. I think this bye week, the Ravens need to take a serious look at themselves in terms of the personnel they have and honestly make a decision. If you honestly believe Greg Roman is going to take us to where we want to go in the postseason and you choose to keep him after everything you've seen, I don't know what to tell you. I'm not going to, at this point, if we come out of the bye week and I'm not seeing any changes from this offense, they just like, all right, we're going to play more discipline. No changes, no aggressiveness by DeCosta to try and bring a receiver. No talks about looking for another offensive coordinator. If we come out of this bye week and nothing's changed on this Ravens team, then honestly, I could see us just losing in the postseason game. We'll go 1 and done. We'll probably lose to the Steelers. We'll probably lose to the Bills if they get to the playoffs, which they will, and we'll probably lose to the Titans again. I could very well see it. Did you see that Titans team today? That Titans team is vicious. We gotta have to face off against that team in Week 11, I believe. That team is ferocious, and right now I don't want to face off against them. They would eat us alive. And we got Pittsburgh next week, not next week, after the bye week. I don't want to deal with them right now either. With the way this offense is playing, no, I don't want to deal with them. So the bye week's here. We're going to be talking about this throughout the week, and we'll just see what we can just come up with. And hopefully throughout the bye week, the Ravens do make some serious changes in terms of personnel, and they make some upgrades. Maybe they can get a receiver in here, or maybe they can get a new coordinator. That's what I would hope. But they need to take a serious look at themselves and just make changes that need to be done at this point. Just make changes. I've got nothing else to say. This was all on pure emotion. I probably could have done a better job here in terms of giving you guys a recap, but the game literally just ended, and I was just filled with emotion. I couldn't give you a full, concise analysis the way I want to in terms of what we need to do moving forward. But it is what it is. That's all I got for this one. We'll be talking throughout the week about what the Ravens need to do, how the bye week's going to happen. How the bye week's going to go, and what moves they can make. We won the game and we're 5-1, so that's great. But we got some tough opponents coming up ahead, and if we don't step up, we're going to be in trouble, especially if we get to the postseason. That's all I got right now. Team needs to make some changes. Team needs to improve, and we'll see what happens when we come out of the bye week. I'm out of here, ladies and gentlemen. Peace.